You're listening to Storystruck. I'm Rachel, a writer and editor.
And I'm Nino, an intuitive book coach and writer. Welcome to our curious community where we dive into everything books and writing. Let's get into the story.
Hello, and welcome to the very first story spiral of season 3. And today we are digging into The Heroine's Journey by Gail Carriger.
I am so excited about this because I feel like, not only am I very excited about our story spirals in general and the fact that we now have our Fable book club and we have a good handful of people participating in it and stuff. Although I think we're all figuring out how to be a book club in Fable because it's real different than just having a book club in person, but it's fine. But also the way she looks at all these things, I sit here and I ponder stories, and it's been my own little personal hyperfixation. And so I used to have these internal debates in my head, analyzing story and stuff like that. And so when I would watch who are the internet dads? Cinema therapy. When I would watch cinema therapy, that was my getting out and participating with somebody else. And, sometimes we'll do that and we'll go down our spirals, hence the story spirals and stuff. But the way she analyzed everything was just yes, I'm not the only one who sees this shit.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really cool because we are all very familiar with the hero's journey. Joseph Campbell is the one who kind of started talking about the archetypes and things like that. If you want to dig in deep, check out Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey. It's a little bit dense. But we know the hero's journey as writers because we hear about it all the time, especially when you look at... It's
literally everywhere all the time.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
It got really popular with the original Star Wars movies, which are classic hero's journey
And she
models.
mentions that in there, that he basically just took the paper of it. He's like, okay, so next thing, Luke Skywalker has to meet his mentor. That's the next part we have to hit because this is how we do story. Because they were creating this stuff as they were going. It was very noodle, very let's throw the spaghetti against the wall. All right, sure. This is what the instructions say. Let's do it.
Yep, let's go. Let's hit all of these beats and have it out. So that has been the main mode, for decades of, let's do a story. We're going to do the hero's journey story. We're going to beat it out like that in a 3-act or 4-act structure, but we're going to hit all of these different things.
Beat it out.
So it's cool and it works, right? But it's not always the best fit for everything. And as we'll talk about today, and Gail talks about in her book, so much stuff out there is actually a heroine's journey that you may not think of as a heroine's journey.
Yeah. And also the thing that she mentioned in this a few times that just deeply resonated with me is what is the social implications and impact of the hero's journey versus the heroine's journey. And I went down this whole thing about, as she's breaking down the hero's journey and then I just have random social hyperfixations and stuff and looking at the socialization of those who are socialized as male and how the hero's journey in its glorification matches patriarchal conditioning for men. And this is why we have, or this is a contributing factor in why we have such a significant population of men being lonely, being isolated, because that equals the story that we have. Literally, we're all stardust and stories in the end. Literally everything is just stories in our mind. All of our beliefs come from stories in our life. And so when actually we are looking at the story of our life, in addition to the stories we are being told, and then the stories we're telling other people, subsequently, we get this glorification and this socialization that to be a hero, to be a good man worth looking up to, equals isolation and suffering and silence. And so there is a significant social implication that occurs when you're doing a hero's journey if you follow that particular thing. And like she talks about in the book, you don't have to follow every beat. You don't have to follow every element of the hero's journey. And I would suggest the big one being the sacrifice and the suffering and the isolation in the end. That needs to just fucking die. I have big feelings, okay? And it is going to be very seen and felt in this one because I have so many notes. Okay, if you're watching on YouTube, you should because we're delightful. This is my notes. My notes just go on forever. And I didn't even start taking notes until halfway through this journey. Halfway through listening to this book. So I'm so here for this. Get ready for my Italian to come out strong. So, okay, did you have anything that you wanted to say out the gate?
So I guess I'm going to just read a couple sentences from her book just to kind of center us of hero's journey versus heroine's journey.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like at its like most basic, and we'll like dive into it. So this is what she says. Here's the hero's journey in one pithy sentence. Increasingly isolated protagonist stamps around, prodding evil with pointy bits. Eventually, fatally prods the baddie and gains glory and honor. And here's the heroine's journey in one pithy sentence. Increasingly networked protagonist strides around with good friends, prodding them and others on to victory together. So we're still having a victory in both, but the way we get there is different, and the outcome of that victory is different. And I don't know, do you want me to share like 2 examples that she gave from her book so like people can visualize what the difference is between them?
Yeah.
So I thought these were really good examples because it also shows that a hero and a heroine's journey doesn't have to equate to gender or gender identity or anything like that.
I know what you're going to add.
Yeah, so I'll share the 2 she had, and then we also have our own awesome examples that we're going to chat about in here, but I felt like these 2 that she gave were really great so you could see that difference. So we have, so in the book, she doesn't just talk about books. She talks about everything from like books and movies and, all different kinds of things. So these are 2 movies. The first one we have is Wonder Woman. And you would think, it's a badass woman. It's a heroine's journey. Nope, it's a hero's journey. So in that movie, we have Diana, and she's like this badass warrior, and she leaves home to go on this adventure, and she has to take down the big baddie. I think it's at Ares, I think is who it is in there. So she's going to go do this battle, and she does end up kind of teaming up with someone. And so you would think teamwork, we're working together kind of a thing. But they're just like, I feel like he's just kind of like the eye candy. He's the accessory that's just kind of there to like be this character for her fish out of water in our world. And then she literally has to like cross no man's land within the story as she goes across this World War II scene. Or was it World War I? I don't remember. I think we're World War I. And the no man's land, like that's like this little isolated spot, and that's literally what they call it. And she has to cross it, and she crosses it by herself. She strips off all of her stuff, bears herself, walks across it. And then at the very end, she does the final battle on her own, just her. And she is literally the only person that can do it. And she does it. And when she does it, she sacrifices. So she sacrifices the love interest. He dies. Sorry, I'm spoiling it for you, but you probably already know this. It's old. Yeah. Deal with it. So then she also sacrifices herself in a sense and isolates herself because she can never now go home to the Amazons or the Amazonians. She stays in our world, and we have like the ending scene of her now in our modern times staring, reminiscing of a photo of her lover who died. And she's just all by herself, right? Like same thing we think of Frodo at the end of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, and that was one that I was like, really, I'm like, but I know it's a hero's journey, but what about the fellowship? Like, he'd be nowhere without the fellowship. What about Sam? Sam was everything. Even Smeagol helped him a lot. Like, and I was like going insane. I'm like, but what is the big piece of it is that he has to bear the burden alone, and he ends up suffering and isolated. Even when he goes back to the Shire, he is isolating himself. You know, he doesn't
Exactly.
participate like the other hobbits do. Even
Yeah.
Sam has a wife and kids and, you know, is back in the community and stuff like that. Frodo isn't.
Yeah.
And stuff. And so, yeah, that one was a real like, but wait, what about?
Yep.
So,
And that's going to tie into an example you have where we can have this like flim
yeah.
flam, like all of a sudden you think it's one type of journey and whoa, it's another.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's how it ends. It ends with
Mhm.
that hero's journey of him isolating
And
all these
even in
things.
the story, Frodo is very much like, nope, this is my burden. I can't accept help. I can't
Yeah.
accept help from anyone and stuff. And he's so even still, he's isolating himself as, oh,
Yes.
nope, this is my burden. I have to be the one to suffer with it.
Because he's
And
actively pushing everyone
Sam,
away.
as the heroine of the story, is basically saying, no, let's share the load, you know, like he says, you know? And so, yeah.
Oh, it's you, our heroine. So our heroine's journey, we're now going to have a male protagonist, and this is going to be Harry Potter. So in Harry Potter, it's all about this network community coming together and not doing it on our own, right? So even though Harry is technically the chosen one, he can never do all of it by himself. He always has to have this help from other people. He's not afraid of asking for that help, having people around him, delegating tasks, right? Like in the first movie or first book, when they're going into the chamber, you know, there's a chess game. Okay, well, great. That's what, you know, Ron is really good at. Hermione has to figure out how we're going to get past the dog and like all of these things. Harry, I'm good at flying. I'm going to go and do the thing that I have to fly. Everybody has a role and a purpose, and he lets them help him.
Yeah.
And even though the very last little thing he does in that book, he kind of is doing by himself. He isn't truly by himself because he also has help there with him, but he couldn't get there on his own. And then if we think of the culmination of the series, we see that in every single book, in every single movie, that he's just building this network stronger and stronger and stronger. So when we get to that very end, he's not destroying all the Horcruxes by himself. He can't do that. He's not fighting that last epic battle all by himself. Everyone is rallying around him. And even at the school, when he's not there at the school and they're out hunting Horcruxes, the resistance is developing in the school. Like Neville is there, like, let's freaking go. And, you know, keeping it all together and keeping it flowing. So the battle and everything could still go on even if Harry wasn't there. And then at the end of the book, Harry has that choice of, I can keep this like most powerful epic wand ever and be the most powerful wizard, and that will isolate me. But I defeated the bad guy. This is mine by right. And he decides, no, I don't want that. I want what I have here. I want my found family. I want all of this.
Over power.
He chooses that, yes. And so at the end, he is more united than he was at the beginning, and he was still victorious. He didn't need to lose himself and isolate and sacrifice. Even though he was willing to do that, he didn't have to, and he made that choice. So that's kind of the difference between that heroines and heroes journey of self-sacrifice, do it all on your own, versus pull together community. We're going to do this together.
Right. And the thing I love, especially about Gail's analysis and perspective of the heroine's journey, because she's not the only one who talks about the heroine's journey, is how feminist, impact-driven, and gender-inclusive her analysis was.
Oh, yeah. It was amazing. Like, she like even had like a whole, like, I don't know if it was a whole chapter, but it's a good chunk of a part where she was talking about that.
Yeah, exactly. And how, you know, sex and gender are two different things. She had the whole section of like, this is the pronouns that I am using for the hero and for the heroine, just for clarity's sake, but no. And she stressed it. And then she stressed it even more throughout the book when she'd go into it. And like, just a reminder, a heroine doesn't have to be a girl, you know, like constantly through the book and constantly differentiating sex and gender and differentiate, you know, like the journey in relation to, and then also adding on top of that, like being mindful of the impact, being mindful of, okay, don't use these, these types of tropes can be damaging for these communities, or this type of thing, I so deeply appreciate how inclusive and she is on the impact of books for people of all types. And because this is the thing that goes through my head all the time. This is the stuff that I really care about. And part of why I call my business the Writer's Rebellion, why everything I do is impact driven, because stories are so impactful. Stories literally change our whole perception of our world. And for better or worse, Harry Potter is one of them. Harry Potter's actual journey was about love. And just for the sake of this discussion, we are going to ignore the mold hate-filled psycho that wrote it for a brief moment, because trans lives matter. And we're just going to talk about the story. We're going to attempt to separate the art from the artist, which I can't do very well. So
we have other examples.
That. So we're going to use other example. But I do have an issue here. Like, I totally understand why she chose Harry Potter and why she chose Twilight as big examples of the heroine's journey. And I totally understand why she did that, because not only do they have extremely popular movies, but they're also extremely popular books. And so chances are people will understand that. I get that. But fuck, I hate those things now.
Yes. Well, also we got to look at when it was written too. And I think it was before probably like all that kind of stuff went down.
Before she, with Rowling, it was before she lost her mind.
Yes.
Theoretically.
So real quick,
I lost her mind publicly, maybe.
I'm going to blow your mind with something.
Okay, blow my mind.
Then I'm going to break down what the heroine's journey is. If you haven't read it, I'm going to go through just real quick bullet points of the journey, and then we'll chat some more. Did you know? So Gail Carriger, she is a romance writer, prolific romance writer. Did you know she also writes LGBTQ plus romance?
Yeah, well, she had it in the book where she's got a bisexual werewolf. I'm like, yes,
I was like, I'm like, oh my God, I need to read
We don't get enough bisexual representation in literature. It's like straight or gay. That's it.
Yes, and I was like, and bisexual, like, paranormal romance. I was like,
and bisexual man, because so often when a bisexual is shown, it is a woman, and not often do men get bisexual representation. Yes.
I'm stoked. I
really want to read some of her work now after reading this, because she's just a delightful writer. Those little quippy things that she wrote, just like, and those little like breaks in the analyzation of it all, and just like to like have a little joke moment in there. She was just delightful.
Yeah, this book was very enjoyable to read. It did not feel like a dense,
not super enjoyable to listen to. Just FYI, Rachel read it with her eyeballs. I read it with my ears. If you really enjoy the sound of Siri, then listen to the audiobook. Because it was basically the only reason I knew it wasn't AI was because she changed accents at one point and she laughed at another point and stuff. Like, I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure this is a real human, but this definitely sounds like the voice of Siri.
Which is too funny, because I also got the audiobook because I wanted to refresh before we chatted. So I was like, I'm going to listen to it on my commute. And the audio narrator didn't really bother me too much. At first I was like,
even one of
but then I got into it and I was like, okay, I'm cool with it.
Yeah. Even one of our book club members. Yeah. Peggy. She had a hard time getting through the book because of the audiobook narration and how just very robotic it was. Yes. She was even like, is this like up to, like, is this, modern enough to be voiced by AI? Like, is this AI? I'm like, I don't think it is.
No, it's more of that, like, I'll call the old schooly time of audiobook narration where, but she had a little bit more energy than some of the old school audiobook narrators have had, where it's just like Ferris Bueller, like, rah, 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 and I'm like, this was slightly better.
But it's a big contrast compared to Jeff Hayes, who has now ruined me for audiobooks. Thanks so much.
I know. It's like, after coming off of that, nothing is going to like stand up. You're like, yeah, this is trash. I don't like it. So our heroine's journey, it has 3 parts. We have the descent, which is an involuntary withdrawal. We have the search stage, which is aided by companions. And we have the ascent, which is a structured reunion. So these are kind of just the little points. I won't explain what all of them are, but at least you can hear the names, which are pretty self-explanatory. So it starts with a broken familial network. And again, even though these are the terms that she's using in there, this doesn't have to be taken literally as a broken familiar network. Like it could be something else that equates to that. We have pleas ignored, like pleas for help, an abdication of power, so giving that power away, a family or member or network, someone in the network offers aid. And then we're entering isolation and danger. So we're going into that search stage where they are going to be in disguise. There's going to be a surrogate family developed. They're going to visit the underworld. And there's going to be delegation, networking, and information gathering. Then we hit stage 3, which is all about compromise. So we have a negotiation for reunification, a structured reunion, revenge and glory are irrelevant, and the network is established or rebuilt. And that's what leads to having the victory at the end. So that's kind of the journey, not necessarily specifically all the plot points, but that's the journey that the character is going on in the heroine's journey. So at least you kind of know some of the language and stuff that she uses in case we mention any of that stuff as we're chatting.
Yes. So did you have any examples come up that you're like, and this is a heroine's journey versus this, or like, did you have anything specific that popped in your head as you were learning about this and just realizing, oh, this is what it is?
Yes. So I actually am going to do an example of the Avengers as a heroine's journey. So, because I know you love Loki. And so Loki was the mischief maker in this one. So Loki had to come out to play here. So if we look at the heroine's journey, it shows that connection equals power. And that is what the Avengers learn in this. Like if we look at some of their individual ones, not all of their individual journeys are necessarily heroes' journeys. But if we look just really quick, like Captain America, like he's as isolated as he can be by the end of that movie.
Yes.
Like he's not even in his own time anymore. Like, that's like way isolated. Everyone's taken away from him. He's on his own in the end. He has to do it. But we don't see that type of journey when the Avengers come together in the Avengers movie. So when Loki pops in, he isn't just like showing up just with like the Tesseract there and like, now I'm going to whoop all your asses, right? Like he gets caught. He wants to get caught because he knows that he can't fight all of them together. Together, they are going to be strong and they're going to be a force to reckon with. So his role is to destabilize the group. And we can see this when he gets caught and he comes in there. He's manipulating, exploiting, mistrust. He's turning them against each other. He unleashes the Hulk, so they literally have to fight each other. Like there's all of this stuff going on that's like they were starting to come together, then they were getting torn apart. So he's broken them apart, and in order to defeat the big bad, they all have to come together again because everybody's going to play a different role, much like in Harry Potter, right? Cap, he's good at organizing, getting everybody where they need to be. And, Black Widow, she's good at like taking people down and she works so well with Hawkeye. Like they play off of each other so well. Hulk, he's good at smacking shit. Like he's going to toss Loki into the ground and make Loki cry, and go after
God.
Oh my God. He's going to go after the big epic monsters, and he's going up after those big monsters with Iron Man. Like there's points where everybody's working together in their own strengths and their own roles because Hulk smash. So the heroine's journey, we have that connection equals power. So once they start connecting, then they have their real power again. So Loki was trying to break that connection and lose their power. The climax is when they're restoring that connection and leading to victory. So I think that kind of gave me a thought of don't only look at what your protagonist is doing, but also look at what your antagonist is trying to take away. So are they trying to take away and destabilize that connection and all of that stuff? Because if they are, then maybe we're on a heroine's journey if that connection ends up being the important thing that leads to victory at the end, kind of like how Voldemort was trying to isolate Harry. And then at the end, it was them coming back together is what led to the victory.
Yeah. And, I was thinking too of that because, Loki has another journey through the Loki TV series or Disney Plus series or whatever. And I'm just like, oh, is that a heroine's journey? And I'm sitting here thinking of it. And I'm like, oh, because he learns about the importance of connection and using, right? Especially in the second season there. But where does he land?
Yep.
As isolated
as you can
and
be.
alone as a human can be. And the hero move that Loki eventually does is self-sacrifice and isolation.
Yep.
And I'm like, no, Loki. So I don't know. Maybe in Doomsday he'll finally get his heroine's journey because.
Yeah, because you can always come back. We can always come back and take that heroine's route. And sometimes you need to have that tragic downfall moment to go up again, right? Like if we look at Harry Potter, it almost seems like that. Like he gets all of that network stripped away and boom, he hits that bottom point. But that bottom point isn't the ending of the story. That bottom point is when things pivot and he realizes that he needs that connection, he needs that support to be able to do it. And then he goes up, much like in the Avengers. We have that epic, shitstorm moment where everybody's at each other's throats and all of this stuff. And if they didn't come back together, then they wouldn't have had the heroine's journey. They would have had their individual journeys and they would have been individual hero journeys.
Yeah. And, she had said something in the book that was like about Harry Potter and how it seemed like Dumbledore was constantly trying to push Harry to a hero's journey, and he refused and maintained his heroine's journey status throughout the stories. And so I'm like, that is really, really interesting to look at. And then if you look at Spider-Man No Way Home, that same type of dynamic occurs between Doctor Strange and Peter, where Doctor Strange is like, no, you cannot have it both ways. You have to isolate. You have to isolate. And he's like, but I don't want to isolate. He ends up tomfoolery, right? Even when it comes to helping the villains that came through, he's like, no, we do this through connection, because May raised him right. Like we're here to help people, and that's the whole point. And like, so helping people is like connecting to their true humanity, just not looking at, Octavius as just an insane villain, but seeing the person underneath the problem and then solving the problem to get to the person, right? He goes through this whole thing, and then he has the other two Spider-Men that come in, and they're this huge team, and they learn how to work together on the Statue of Liberty, right? And they're doing Peter 1, Peter 2, Peter 3, and it's amazing and delightful. And then where does Peter end up? Isolated and alone, where nobody remembers Peter Parker at all. And he loses every single person in his life. May dies, and then, Doctor Strange doesn't know who he is except for as Spider-Man. And so no one can actually see him. They only see a person in a suit, right? He loses the love of his life. He loses his best friend and sidekick character, which she mentions in the book as well. Sidekick character. I'm like, oh my God, Ned is Peter's sidekick. And so he ends up in a hero's journey place, which I thought is really, really interesting to look at, because the entire time he's having this heroine's journey, even when he has his like dark night of the soul moment, even when he has this dark night of the soul moment after May dies, he heals as much as he can through connection, right? It's and his friends show up for him and then bring people to who understand to him, right? And so he heals through this connection, but then still ends up sacrificing himself, literally himself, as Peter. He is sacrificed and is isolated and alone. And then it's interesting because I'm going to try not to spoil anything, because Brand New Day is, I think, still in theaters. So if you haven't seen it yet, no spoilers. But that journey then takes him from the hero's journey that he ended in and turns him towards that heroine's journey again. Where he evolves throughout the brand new movie is all heroine's journey. It is literally the heroine's journey of how do we make the hero into the heroine. And I'm like, yes! Because Spider-Man is my hero, Loki is my villain. I love them.
Well, and it's interesting too, like, so diving back into having like someone go from a hero to a heroine's journey or a heroine to a hero's journey. If we go back to Avengers and we look at that and we have that ensemble cast, so within that, we have the overall heroine's journey for most of our characters. But if we look at Iron Man goes and he sacrifices himself. He's like, I'm going to die. He essentially dies, right? And that is him having his hero moment, where everyone else is having that heroine's moment. So if he hadn't sacrificed himself, then he also would have had that heroine's thing where they were working together. But because he ultimately sacrificed himself at the end, his individual journey ended up becoming the heroes. But if we look at Iron Man 3, which takes place after Avengers, and he's dealing with his PTSD, he is kind of isolating himself. He's kind of pushing people away. He's dealing with some baggage. But then he realizes that he can't do this on his own. He has that, little kid help him. He eventually brings back in his friends. And when they have the battle at the end of that, they are coming together for that battle. He's letting, Piper work with him. Pepper work with him. His, buddies working with him.
Mm-hmm.
They all come together and they're all needed for that end battle. And he destroys what was isolating him before with all of the Iron Man suits that he'd been concocting in his little cocoon of isolation. He destroys them and essentially ends that isolation and comes into this moment of kind of community and working together. And that was really neat to see him always be on this individual hero's journey, to seeing how that near-death experience or death experience plus the heroine's experience from Avengers reshaped his thoughts. And in future movies, he is all about the team. Everything is about the team and keeping the team going and not fighting just by yourself. So I just thought that was neat to see.
Yeah, and it really goes to show you that these are templates. They're not rules. Like, I have this occurring, I have a wise mentor, therefore I am on a hero's journey. I have to follow all of these beats. This is a plug and play kind of thing. And if something doesn't fit in your narrative or for the overall impact of your message in your book, you can add a different element to it, And so when I was creating my Fantastical Foundations course while I started listening to this, before our season started, because I tend to listen to about 5 different things at the same time. But she was talking about the hero's journey. I almost decided to omit the hero's journey from my Fantastical Foundations course because, like I said, everything my company is about is impact centered. And so I'm taking everybody through where's your message? Like, how do you develop that message in, I have the 3 keys for impact driven fiction as one of my freebies and stuff. And through that, it's like, part of it is like, what is your impact message? What is that when you have a reader read your book, what transformation, what emotional shift, what inspiration, what healing do you want them to have? And stuff, and going in on it, going into your book with that in mind helps you to create these high vibe stories, these stories that change the world and therefore become bestsellers because everyone fucking loves them, right? And so as I was looking at that, I'm like, so the hero's journey is kind of against everything my company stands for. And I was like really trying to decide whether I'm going to include it or not. And so what I chose to do was I included it, but I talked about the breakdown. I talked about the problems and how you don't have to keep all of the pieces. And like I said, I think that whole suffering in silence, alone and isolated in the end is the worst piece of the hero's journey, and it has done enough damage in our society that we can leave it behind. That one element, we can leave it behind. And I think that, something that is so important to me is that element of connection, which is intrinsic in the heroine's journey. So is it just better to do the heroine's journey? Probably. But then you have, like she said, it often ends in some sort of happily ever after, right? Kind of scenario. And the more snobby, like, oh, it's not real literature kind of people tend to frown on that, which is why they, frown on romance and YA and romantasy, is because all of those often have the heroine's journey as the overall structure of them. And therefore also she mentions, in as well as the misogyny that is ingrained into the overall social approach. And like we said on our episode recently, like if a romantasy book was written by a man, would it just be called fantasy? Because there's a lot of fantasy books with a lot of romance elements to it and stuff. So I went down such a spiral. Do you remember the thing that she said? A pussy salvation.
Yes. Oh my God. I was listening on my walk and I forgot that she said the word pussy, and I was just dying laughing about that because I was not expecting that. I totally forgot it with me in my memory. So it was wonderful to experience it a second time.
Because speaking of romantasy, that pussy salvation trope or device, I can't remember if it's like a narrative device or whatever, but the pussy salvation narrative slayed me, first off. And then I'm just like, okay, so hello, shadow daddies.
Yep.
Is this what it is? Like, this is literally what it is. It's this, like, we're going to make, and then it got me thinking, we have a lot of these shadow daddies in the romantasy books. And in those romantasy books, like, the shadow daddy wants to follow a hero's journey. They're all about that isolation. And so often they see the woman as the boon, right? And so, like, oh, I must protect my queen and da-da-da. And so you have that hero's journey and heroine's journey battling on the page right there in a lot of these books. Like, I can think of a couple right off the top of my head, but that have that, like Luther in Spark of the Everflame, the Kindred Curse Saga series, and Kingfisher in the Quicksilver series. Like, the shadow daddy who follows the hero's journey, the hero's template to the T. Like, he's been on the hero's journey and he's gone self-isolated and is turned into this, like, grumpy man child. And then through finding the woman, he's gotten his pussy salvation now, and he's a better dude, and he's no longer the hero. He is the love interest along the way, and he's learning how to shed his hero ways. And so I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah, that was totally unexpected, and I loved it. I was just like, yep. And like right around that same part was when she was talking about tropes. So that's like one of the tropes. And she was saying how, like, in books that follow the hero's journey, they have tropes. And books that follow the heroine's journey, they have tropes. But you see a lot of people complaining about having those tropes in the heroine's journey. But we don't see people complaining about that in the hero's journey. And tropes are there for a reason. They're there because people love them. And that is why we have tropes.
And then, she talked about with reader expectations. You can't tell somebody that they're going to go on a hero's journey and then, not include the hero or the mentor figure or the, you have to, those are important pieces that we are expecting as readers if we're going into this type of journey, or like with genre and stuff like that. Like, if you're going into a romance, you expect there to be romance. Like, if it's a rom-com, there needs to be funny moments, you have some expectations.
Yeah, you got to have those tropes in there because that's what the readers want and that's what makes stories work. You just don't want to be cliche about it, kind of like when she was talking about the pussy salvation. Like that's kind of when we're like going like not the best
And I think
times
that
to
the
go.
pussy salvation really leans itself into pick-me territory sometimes. That I think is something that romance and romantasy writers should be really, really mindful of. And I think that part of that is like the decentering of men. And so people like us who are queer and divorced. And so like we've learned how to decenter men. So it's not something that we're like we enjoy in it, which is part of where our problem probably is when it comes to a lot of romantasy books is we don't center men. And so when the main character centers men, you're like, girl, why?
Yeah.
You know?
Do you know what you could be doing with all that time by yourself? You could write a book. Hell yes, let's go.
So, and I think that that's, one of those things like she talked about being mindful as the writer of like what your story is doing and showcasing and stuff. So that was just an aside on the pussy salvation and pick-me-isms.
Yeah, we were looking at the hero versus the heroine, and we were looking at how with the hero's journey, right, we were talking earlier that really glorifies doing it on your own and being strong, being powerful and taking it all on and, just suffering through it and getting it done. Where if you are asking for help, you are delegating tasks, you are doing all these things that are actually qualities of a great leader. To
Yes.
delegate tasks.
Yes. That was the other thing too.
Yeah.
Like a heroine is a great leader. A hero is a great hero.
Yes. A hero does it on their own and they may not be doing it to the best effect, to doing it the most efficiently or doing it the right way. A heroine, maybe she may not make the right choice either, but she knows her strengths and she knows her weaknesses and she knows how to assemble that team and have that team work together towards an ultimate goal. But yet that is seen as feminine in a negative way and weak to ask for help because you can't do it all on your own. You must be super weak. But all right, let's take a look at something. Could one man build the pyramids all by themselves? No, they could stack some stones and they'd be like, boop. But a team of people can go and build these epic monuments together. So, like, just because you have a team doesn't mean that's weak. Because you are asking for help, because you are assembling people, doesn't mean you're weak. That's how empires, businesses, all these things are built and are successful because they're going on that heroine's journey of pulling everybody together, where the one person trying to do literally everything on their own is like going bankrupt and like can't keep anything afloat because there's literally just one of them and you can't do everything the whole time with growing and expanding how you want to go. So, right, we have to get rid of that notion of glorifying being this chosen one, I have to do it all on my own as the only thing that's showing strength versus I'm going to get all of these people together with me and then we are going to kick ass because you know what? You're a hell of a lot stronger and you're taking on that villain of that one person who thought their shit don't stink and they can do it. Guess what? We're going to knock you over.
Often is the villain isolated and traumatized and miserable and angry and power hungry. The villain and the hero is a Venn diagram with a lot of overlap, and she even talks about in there, like the hero can be the villain very, very easily because the villain thinks that they're right. Thanos thought he had something there, he just missed the mark, like, no, we're not going to double the food supply. We're just going to kill everyone. you know? So, and I think that if you look at the heroine's journey and you look at real life, right? We as readers are evolving. We are understanding psychology better as a collective, right? We are understanding human behaviors and emotions, all of the things that are psychology better as a collective people. In addition to, as readers, we are identifying these things a lot easier. Like we can identify the toxic traits in characters and, like identify when they're just, overusing a specific trope that's been done over and over again or whatever, when they're just like objectifying a woman because a male writer, just needed a hot piece of ass in the book, or whatever, so we can identify those things. So as readers, as we are evolving as readers and as people, we have to look at what is realistic. Even if we are in this high fantasy world or this science fiction world or an alternative reality of something, what is real life? And if you look at real life examples of people who overcome great odds, of people who create big changes in the world, the people that we would say, that is my hero, they are often heroines. Not a single person has done it and made a huge, great impact. There was always supporters by their side. There were always people delegating, oh, you're going to write my speech. Your word, choices are better than mine. These are your strengths. And so will you write my speech for me? They had organizers. They had team members. They had other people around them, and they were the leaders of the change, right? Like Martin Luther King Jr. was the leader of the change, but he had so many people behind the scenes supporting him. He was just the figurehead, right? Everybody was there to create the change. So, and I think as writers, looking at those things can really help us to make our characters and make our story something that is more tangible, something that is more immersive and more inspirational or more healing for the readers. And I think that that's also why romantasy, IA, and cozies have become so popular, is because people are now at the phase where they're like, you know what? I don't care if this is frowned upon to be a romantasy or romance lover and stuff like that. Like our parents, the previous generation, they'd hide their romance books. It wasn't something that they were like telling all their friends and posting it all over online and telling everyone they knew, oh my God, I just read this great romance book, right? Because it was like this taboo. It was something that was looked down on in society and stuff. The millennial generation and the Gen Z generation, they're no longer caring. They're like, listen, this is my one joy in this dystopian fantasy that I'm currently living. So I'm going to be a romantasy girly and you're going to have to hear about it. Like if you don't like it, keep scrolling kind of thing. It's something that we all love. And so we're like, well, we're just going to do whatever we want. Because what are they going to do? Raise the prices of eggs and make housing unaffordable? And so now we're not caring, and therefore these things are becoming more and more popular, and we are being more and more impacted by them collectively.
And I think something that like I want to circle back to as well, where we're talking like, is the hero's journey or the heroine's journey better? And I think that they both serve purposes, right? It's not like we should never write a hero's journey ever again.
I am ride or die for Lord of the Rings. I got the hot
right
there.
Yeah. Like some stories are really best served by that hero's journey. We want to make sure we're doing that hero's journey intentionally and not just like, well, it has to be this way because that's what Star Wars did. And that's what all of these books did that were done by quote unquote serious authors. Like it's, the heroine's journey, that's all for romance and comedy and things like that. But if you look at like on TV, if you have anything like CSI and NCIS, those are heroines' journeys, even though they're like police procedurals because they all come together and they have to work together. And people don't like poo-poo that like they do with like a romance novel or something like that. So I think that we want to make sure that we are intentional with which journey we're taking and which journey suits the genre we're writing for. And to know that it's okay that you may have a series you're writing and maybe your first book is a hero's journey. And then it pivots into a heroine's journey in the next book. And, you can have this where you're bouncing back and forth as long as it makes sense and drives the story forward and drives your character's development forward in the way that you want it. Because maybe you need to have them hit that like rock bottom point and like book 2 out of a 3-book trilogy. And so it makes sense for that book 2 to end on a hero's journey, even though it may have started in a heroine's journey. So it's just a lot of food for thought for us as authors of what elements we want to put in and why. I think that's a big thing. Why are we putting that in? And what impact is that going to have on our reader? But what impact is that having on our character? And is it serving the character in the story? And that, I think, is the driving force behind the decisions that we're going to make.
I did want to talk about one thing where she talked about the reader expectations and reader betrayal. What was her term she used for it? I had it written down because I thought it was so good. However, she compared reader betrayal to an experience with a sandwich, and I'm obsessed. Because, I think that when we talk, there's a lot of talk online and podcasts and writing books about reader expectations, right? When you're going into a romance book, you expect to have a meet cute. You expect to have those moments where, they meet and there's romance, and you expect them to get together at the end. And if you have a romance book and they don't get together in the end and it's a romance book, you're expecting a happily ever after moment. That's when your reader screams at the book and throws it at the wall. And I tell you, if I had physical copies of some of the books that I've listened to, I would have done that. In fact, I almost did it to my phone one time because I'm like, what in the hell? And so
you're going to have to get like a proxy book just to pick up and throw.
Literally, I'm like, I need one. And I just, like, my walls are too fragile. My house is like 200 years old. So I don't know. I don't know about that, but
I'll get you a pillow of a book and then you can throw the pillow book.
Yes, I will take that. Yes. But yeah, so, when we think about that reader betrayal, it kind of is like, is it, when do we honor our art versus when do we follow what our readers are expecting and stuff. And so I thought that was a really, really great comparison, because she talked about, the people who are like, but what if, how do we honor our art and all that stuff. She's like, well, then you write it in a journal. If you really care about your art is for you, then you write in a journal. If you want to sell books, then you write for your readers. And I love that perspective because that's the whole freaking point. The whole point of writing a book is to write it so somebody reads it and loves it.
Yeah.
So what are your takes on some of that reader betrayal? 'Cause I really liked that section.
Yeah, I thought that was absolutely fantastic. And that's like something I always harp on, that you need to meet the reader expectations. You need to know where your book is going to be shelved, right? And we were talking like about the genre mashing as well.
Mhm.
You can blend things, you can do things, but there are certain standards that you cannot break. It is like the unofficial contract that you have signed when you are going to be like, I'm going to write X type of book. All right, you can play, but there's these like 3 things, 5 things, whatever that genre demands.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
By
if you
saying
break
that you're
those,
writing a
nope.
science fiction, you're making certain promises that science will be included somewhere in that fiction, right? Like,
Yes.
that is a major component of science
Yes.
fiction.
It's going to have science and it's going to have fiction. If it doesn't have one of those, then you are in some deep doo-doo. And your readers will be pissed at you. And as well, like, I think also making sure that you're wrapping up your storylines is like the reader expectations. Like with the romance, we want to have something culminated at the end of it. Even if it's a trilogy or a duology or something, you may not have that happily ever after at the end of it, but you need to have them have made forward progress.
Yeah, it needs
So
to feel
maybe they
like a
have like a
complete story.
milestone thing. Yeah. So in the beginning, if they've just met, maybe your milestone thing is that, towards the climax, they kiss or they say, I love you or something like that. And then you could have them still not together at the end and something can happen to kind of break them apart as long as your reader knows that story is continuing.
Yeah.
But if your reader
Even if
has
they're
no
not
idea it's going to
physically
continue,
together, maybe they're emotionally together.
exactly.
So that way they're having that satisfaction, right? There was something that I don't remember if it was in this book or if it was another one that I was reading because again, multiples. It was like this fine line between reader expectations and surprise that
Yeah.
you want to walk along. I think that was this book. You want to walk along that line because, especially if you're doing something like a mystery or a cozy or a romance where there's a lot more expectation around those things versus an epic fantasy per se. And so, if you're wanting to have to walk that line between where they're expecting the meet cute to happen, but maybe you can surprise them by the meet cute being completely different than is normally seen. And that's where the art lives, while also giving the readers what they're looking for. And it's this balancing act. Because if you just want to write art, there's a lot of open mic nights that you can read your little journal entries into and stuff, and it can just be whatever you want it to be. But if you're actually wanting to get your stories out there and actually make an impact, sell books, be one of these authors that has an author career, then I think having that nice standing on that line is like the best way of doing it.
And that's where like your beta readers will come into play.
Mm-hmm.
Because you may think, oh, I've delivered on the promise. I've done this, I've done that. And then your beta readers get it and they're like, excuse me? Like, you said this was going to be like steampunk, but like it was just more like sci-fi and not really steampunk. Or, you said this was going to be historical, but then like you toss this random stuff in here and I don't understand why this is in here, or maybe it just made you happy. So that's when you get that feedback and it's so helpful. And then you can take those pieces, like, said, like, just toss those into a journal, have those be there for yourself. Even if you're writing the book and you're doing that first draft of it, that zero draft or whatever, and you want to explore something, you can explore it, but then go back with a keen eye and see, did I put this here for me? Or is this delivering on the reader promise? And if you just put it there for you, yay, you got to write it, you got to explore it, but it's got to go. And that doesn't mean
it
you
helps
have
you
to
understand the story or understand the character more and stuff, but it doesn't have to be included. And that's like where the term "killing your darlings" comes in. And actually, we have a listener who had mentioned something to me, and so shout out Lori, because as she had mentioned for her books, what she does is those chapters that are like, yeah, this is not quite working for the story, but I really love it. She takes those out, and that is like fan bonuses.
Cool.
And I just thought that was the most delightful idea to be like, hey, you want more like special, like here's a chapter that didn't make the cut and stuff. Like here's some, special edition with like the added things, or, if you're on my email list, you get this or that and things. How delightful is that? Because how often are we just like, I love this story, I wish there was more, and then we have to wait for more to be written. And it's just like, but if you join the email list or whatever, then you get these like extra special tidbits that can just give you a little bit more of the story. So I thought that was a really, really cool idea and a way to mitigate that killing your darlings pieces, right? Because like we watch the extended cut of Lord of the Rings all the time. Like we love those added elements to it. We love getting deleted scenes and stuff. We love bloopers, I miss those. They should bring those back.
Yes, I've been loving that, watching like DVDs, because you get all that on the DVDs. Yeah, I forgot all the awesome stuff that we miss out on streaming.
Yes. Oh my God, it's a whole thing.
So let's give that to our, readers.
So then
give them those moments.
Yep. Give them those moments and stuff. And then she had some really, I love villain. Okay, this is the last thing I'm going to bring up. Okay, I love villain. My book is called Becoming the Villain. Like I love villainry because I think that it, looking at and analyzing villains, we can really kind of analyze the social conditioning of the collective and determine if the villain actually had a little merit and is actually a little bit rebellious, right? And you can see that a lot in like different mythologies, right? Like you have the story of Lilith in the Bible where, is she a villain or did girl just like think that she was an equal human being and, caused a little tomfoolery. Christians, don't come at me. So I was thinking about this, right? She had the thing about like the hero inside the heroine's journey can sometimes be the villain. And I'm like, wait, I gotta know. Well, I need some examples. And then I was sitting here pondering this and I had a little braingasm. So Shang-Chi's dad, Shu Wenwu, I think I'm saying that moderately correctly as a basic white bitch. But so Shang-Chi's dad, he totally was the hero in his journey. If you think about it, right? He was always on this quest, right? The whole backstory about how he and Lee met and fell in love and then had their kids and all that jazz, right? He was on all this quest. She was the boon. He got the boon, but he ended up, they ended up having kids and everything like that. And then he ended up isolated and alone, right? And then when he thought that she was calling again, his little hero mode activated, but he was the villain in Shang-Chi's heroine's journey because everything Shang-Chi was about connection. He connected to, his mother's people. He connected with Katie. He connected, right? He built an entire community together, even though it was him and his dad in the end, like for a moment, and he was like, but still, in order to defeat the big baddie, he had to come collectively, right? And so the hero inside the heroine's journey that is actually the villain is Shu Wenwu in Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. And can you tell that we were really into Marvel? Also, I wonder, I played with this idea a little bit, just with the little bit of backstory that we got for those characters between Shu and Lee, that is Lee, the heroine in her journey, who was to who was enticed into a hero's journey because she was all about her people, right? She was the protector of her people and stuff, and this guardian of the gate into her world. And then he's just like, hey, you're in love with me, let's do this, let's come together. And so he brought her into his isolation, and then she ended up dying, in order for him to go through his whole hero journey of suffering in isolation. And so that was like some of the stuff that made me think of because she didn't give an example of the hero who is the villain in the heroine's journey and stuff. And then it came to me and I'm like, I think I'm onto something with this. And I love his character because he is such a nuanced villain. And nuanced villains, give me all of them.
I think I will wrap us up then with her 5 key ingredients to the heroine's journey. So as you are thinking about writing your own heroine's journey, you can look at these. The first one is the purpose. She says the goal or focus of the journey is different. A hero is usually concerned with defeating an enemy or retrieving a great boon of importance. Think of classic video game quests. But a heroine is looking for reunification with someone who was taken from her. She is concerned with networking, connecting with others, and finding family. The second one is your approach. A hero acts on the offensive most of the time. He is in pursuit of his goals and will kill or, in the case of Odysseus, trick his way to victory. His enemy is stasis. A heroine goes about achieving her goals through communication and information gathering. She is not a conqueror. She is a builder and a general. She sees the skills and strength in others and knows how to best apply them. She is also a delegator. This humanizes the protagonist, who is self-aware enough to know that what she is good at and when someone else can do it better. Her enemy is loneliness and isolation. Number 3 is strength. A heroine's definition of strength is materially different from that of a hero. A hero must eventually go it alone, and the journey usually climaxes with a one-on-one defeat of his enemy. For him, asking for help is a sign of weakness. He must shed the restrictions of civilization and family in order to succeed, while a heroine is the opposite. Requesting aid is a sign of strength. Yeah. It does not diminish the heroine to seek and receive assistance on her journey. In fact, the more companions she has, the stronger she is. And this is making me think of D. Number 4 is power. As a result of all of the above, when a heroine has her most powerful, narrative and iconic moments, these will occur with others. And when a hero is the most powerful, he is alone because his quest is one of self-resilience and solitary achievement. And the last one, number 5, is the ending. A hero, because of his need to self-isolate, has sacrificed too much for his goal, so at the end of his journey, it's bittersweet. And the heroine most likely gets a happy ending, surrounded by family and friends, with the implication of continued safety. And now all I can think about is D&D, because you have to work together to achieve your goal. So,
Because
yeah,
in reality, that's the way it is.
that's the way it is.
So, yeah, I think we highly recommend this book. I collect different books that I recommend to my clients in order to help them on their writing journey. And I think for me, this is one of my must reads for sure. And then we're going to discuss another one next season that is also on my must reads, because we are doing our story spirals in a little bit more of a structured way than we did them before, where the last episode of the month will be our story spiral episodes. Our next book that we're going to be spiraling over is the popular Dungeon Crawler Carl. So if you are a big fan of Dungeon Crawler Carl, or if you haven't read it and are thinking about reading it or listening to it, actually really recommend listening to it. Join us on Fable for our September book club on Dungeon Crawler Carl. And then in October, we have a great gothic horror that we're going to do. So I'm going to read something scary for you guys, because it's October, so therefore we have to, but also I'm a big chicken and I'm a little scared. So.
And it's just a little scary. It's not too crazy scary. It's
I can do
just
spooky.
It's a little spooky and it's sapphic.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And, gay is the way. So lesbians are the way to my heart. So she sold me on it that way. So yeah. And if you're interested in getting some extra support and in developing your own heroine's journey and stuff like that, I do have my Fantastical Foundations course. If you want to check that out, it is on my website. It'll be linked below, all the things. And actually, I'll throw in my freebie, which is the 3 keys to impact-driven fiction, if that type of stuff was really, really resonating with you. So that'll be in the link in the show description thingy below. So,
yes.
Without further ado, we hope that you enjoyed this episode and our spiral into the heroine's journey. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, do all the things, because your support means everything. And without further ado, happy writing!
Thank you for listening. Please like, share, comment, do all the things, because your support means everything for our little podcast. If you have an episode suggestion, please email us at storystruckpodcast@gmail.com and let us know what you'd like to hear next. You can also follow us at